Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we're going to be going over how to craft powerful builds with the Fire Knight's Greatsword. The Fire Knight's Greatsword is an incredible weapon. First things first, though, we're going to show you where to get this amazing weapon in Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree. Of course, this is how to craft builds, Fire Knight edition. The easiest route to grab this and farm this weapon, in my opinion, is from the Storehouse Loft side of Grace and Shadowkeep. Now, to get to this Grace, you're going to have to go through the Church District to drain the water. That's the right side of Shadowkeep. You have to enter through the right side. Now, follow me on screen for the exact route on how to farm this weapon. There's going to be one specific enemy that drops it. Now, there are several of these, but this is one that's relatively close to a site of grace, and you could pretty much avoid all the other enemies on the way, which is the big benefit here. As you can see me sneak down the stairway to avoid the other one, as that one has daggers. So I've been working on my parrying skills lately. I'm not the best with it, but I am learning with it. And it is kind of fun playstyle, by the way. It's definitely a fun playstyle that you could try out if you're looking for a little bit more of a difficult time. But anyway, long story short, if you take this enemy down, he's probably got around a 4% or so drop rate, maybe between 2 and 4%. If you use the Silver Scarab, you can increase that, Arcane as well, and then Silver Pickled Foul Foot will work too. Basically stack as much as you can because you're going against one enemy each time, and you'll increase that drop rate to a significant amount. I actually got this on all 3 of my characters on PC. None of them took more than 20 minutes. All right, let's start with our faith stats here. We have 65 faith. This is going to be for our first 2 builds, and we have 3 in total. 2 faith builds and a strength build. For our faith builds, we have 65 faith, as I mentioned, 22 mind, 28 endurance. We have 20 dexterity. And then we have 16 strength, which will get us past the 22 that we need for the weapon when two-handing with the 1.5 times bonus, and 60 vigor, of course. And we're going to start with a build for Flame Skewer Ash of War, which is an amazing Ash of War, especially for fire damage. It's going to fit the Fire Knight's Greatsword well because it scales really well with Flame Art and gets extra fire damage. Let's see how this does without any buffs, tiers, or talismans first. So to my surprise, this is actually really good without any buffs, tiers, talismans, etc. Anything added to the build here is just going to increase the damage even more, and the base damage itself isn't even bad because the Fire Knight's Greatsword has really good AR. So definitely, surprisingly not bad at all. That was pretty amazing, but we're going to add on to it and turn it into a powerful build. All right, let's start with talking about our Ash of War. We already know that we picked Flame Skewer Ash of War. Now we're going to go with Flame Art. Why are we going with Flame Art? Because this weapon gets extra fire damage and it scales amazingly with Faith. This is going to allow the fire damage to scale with Faith and make the most of our stats. All right, now we're going to go into tiers next because that's the next part of making this build. We're going to add the flame tier, of course, because we're doing a lot of fire damage. That's going to give us 20% more fire damage, and it's going to make better use of that Ash of War, which also coats our weapon with fire as well. Now, the second one for this build specifically, because 65 faith is going to be enough for a weapon faith scaling wise, because once you hit around 60, it starts to get less and less, and after 80, there's diminishing returns. So you have a lot here in terms of what you can do. I'm going to go with the stamina tier, but consider that a flex spot. All right, next up here, we're going to talk about body and aura buffs. Now, once again, I mentioned this in my last video on Milady crafting video. If you haven't seen that, it's in the description below. You can check that out after this one. Now, as far as the body buff and aura buff, you can stack one of each. Golden Bow is going to be our aura buff, 15% more attack and defense. For our body buff, we're going to pick Flame Grant Me Strength, 20% more fire and physical damage. Which means it's also going to outpace Halashaburi, which is 25% more generic damage. Now for this, we are doing both fire and physical damage, so we'll get the 20% for both for our Fire Knight's Greatsword build. Alright, now we're going to look at talismans. We want to have the Winged Serpent Helm, by the way, because this specific helm will increase our Ash of War damage by 10%, so that's a huge bonus right there for us, already increasing our Ash of War. Now, speaking of the Ash of War, we're going to grab the Shard of Alexander for the first slot, because that's going to increase it by another 15%. Single-handedly probably the best talisman in the game. If you do not have the Shard of Alexander, I recommend grabbing the Shard of Alexander because it's amazing. The next one we're going to go with is the Fire Scorpion Charm. 12% more fire damage. Stack that with the flame tier and we'll have 32% more fire damage. And now for our third talisman slot, we've got a lot of options for this one. There's going to be several different things you can do for the third and fourth slot. I'm going to look at the two-handed talisman, but that could end up being our fourth slot because that's a good choice too. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Ritual Swords talisman for 10% more generic damage at full HP. That's going to be really good for this Ash of War. And because this is such a big weapon in terms of damage and everything, for your regular hits, this won't impact the Ash of War, but we were looking at the two-handed sword talisman, so I'm probably going to end up considering that for the 4th slot, because any regular hits you do, you're going to be two-handing this weapon anyway, you might as well get the damage bonus. So I think that's going to be a perfect one for this 4th slot. I was originally thinking about that in the 3rd spot, and a different one in the 4th slot to get out the Ritual Swords Talisman, but if you stay at full HP, the rewards here are going to be really beneficial because we want to boost the Ash of War damage as much as possible because this one has a really high ceiling. A lot of damage on this one. And of course, your buffing order is always going to be from longest to shortest. Our tear is 3 minutes, so we're going to use that. And then we're going to use Golden Vow, which is around 2 minutes, and Flame Grant Me Strength last, which is around 30 seconds. Then we're going to use the Ash of War here, some regular hits, and we got a lot of damage. So I made one mistake and I had all health flash, forgot to switch over to FP. Normally after buffs though, you're going to fill up your FP, but an awesome improvement there and all around a very good build for Flame Skewer on the Fire Knight's Greatsword. Now the next one up here, same stats for build too. And of course, once again, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 28 Endurance, 16 Strength. That's going to be around 24 Strength when we two-hand this, 20 Dexterity. We have 65 Faith, which is plenty of Faith for weapon scaling. Generally, you want to make sure you hit at least 60, all around good stats. And now for the Flame Spear build. We're going to go over crafting a build for Flame Spear. Now, we did this in the Milady crafting video too. We ended up using this one as well for our Faith build. I really enjoy this one. It's chargeable, it does a lot of damage, but it's much better on the Fire Knight's Greatsword. And it's simply because we're going to get a lot more damage from this weapon and poise damage as well. Now, first things first, once again, we're going to pick the Flame tier here. There's going to be a couple obvious ones. That is a very obvious one, giving us 20% more fire damage. And then for slot number 2, you kind of have a flex spot again here. There's a lot you could do in this spot. You can go with the Stone Barb Crack tier. You can go with the Faith tier for a little bit more damage, some defense, or in this case, I'm going to go with the Stamina Recovery tier. Alright, and now we're going to go to Memorize Spell, of course, because we're going to pick our 2 buffs, which are going to be the same again. We're going to go with Golden Vow for our Aura buff once again, 15% more attack and defense. That's one of the best cast, if not the best, cast and forget buff in the entire game. And then for our body buff, we're going to go with Flame Grant Me Strength, 20% more fire and physical damage. And those are going to be our buffs and our tiers. Now we're going to jump into Talismans and go through what we could do with this build. It's going to be a little bit different from last build, and you can see our setup again here. Once again, we have the Winged Serpent Helm, which will also boost the Ash of War. For our first Talisman, we are again going to go with the Shard of Alexander to boost our weapon skill by 15%. And for Talisman number 2, this is going to be pretty straightforward early on here and then a little bit different. We're going to go with the Fire Scorpion Charm again. These are going to be the 2 that are the same because we want to boost fire damage once again because we're coating our weapon with fire, and stacked with the Flame tier, that's 32% more fire damage. Alright, and for our 3rd Talisman slot here, this is where it changes up for sure. We're going to use the Godfrey icon because we now have a chargeable skill. So we're going to take advantage of that. That's 15% more damage when we charge it, which is amazing. The Godfrey icon is perfect here. And lastly, for our 4th slot, we are going to end up going with, and this is very much a flex spot here, what I would consider a flex spot, because there's a lot of stuff you could put here. You go with the Axe Talisman, Two-Handed Sword Talisman, there's a lot of options here. But guess what? I want to do some posture breaking. Mixing in jump attacks sounds perfect, so I'm going to grab the Claw Talisman for this slot. Alright, and that's going to end up completing our build, and we're going to take on the dragons in Caelid, which are essentially respawning mini-bosses to see how much damage we can do with a Flame Spear build of the Fire Knight's Greatsword. By the way, let me know in the comments below how much you've been enjoying Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, what current run you're on, and what build you're using, because I'm curious. Definitely comment below. Alright, we're going to take on these dragons after a little bit of a horseback ride here. And, of course, Flame Spear is really amazing. Out of the 2, by the way, I think I like Flame Spear better personally because of the fact that it's chargeable and you get so much poise damage that even on later new game cycles, this is only Journey 2, but you'll still be able to break bosses with this Ash of War. Alright, let's go take on these dragons now. We've been talking about it. Let's do it. Let's see if we can get some posture breaks and a lot of fire damage and see how much we can do. Alright, so the first hit there, we hit for 2,042 damage. Not bad at all. And then we got a jump attack for around 1,500 damage as well. And then we got 1,000 damage there, hitting his wing. And of course, we got a posture break. And then we got 2,450 damage there. That's not bad at all. Let's see what we can do on the second dragon here. Now, at this point, Flame Grant Me Strength probably ran out, so we probably lost that buff. But 1,701 damage to start there. Not bad at all. And let's get closer to this dragon. See if we can get under this dragon and do some more damage. And we're charging once again. 1702 damage again there. Regular hit for 557 damage. Again, not bad. The Fire Knight's Greatsword's a colossal weapon, so it's going to hit really hard. And it's an amazing one at that. I really love this weapon, by the way. The Fire Knight's Greatsword is amazing for Faith builds. And you can see there, it ended up turning out into a solid build. And that was pretty amazing. The Fire Knight's Greatsword is an impressive weapon. We are going to jump into a strength build for the Fire Knight's Greatsword now. All right, and now our strength stats on screen here. We have 60 vigor, 20 mind, 28 endurance. We have 70 strength. When we're two-handing, no question, we'll be at 99. We have 18 dexterity for the requirements, 15 faith. We're going to need the faith tier later so that we could do the buffs that we like, and there are our 150 stats. And the strength is the way to go here, in my opinion, because you get the two-handed bonus. Let's jump in, and we're going to do a Crucible Wings heavy build. This is going to be pretty good. This is also another great Ash of War, by the way, and if you're wondering why I'm not going in Sacred Affinity, I'm going to mention it here shortly, but the reason is simply because that will give me 3 damage types. When you have 3 different damage types, they have to calculate against boss resistances. It is almost never a good idea. So we're going to say no Sacred because that's going to give us fire, holy, and physical damage. Way too much for us. We're going to go with heavy affinity instead, have a little bit of fire damage as a bonus. Instead, have 2 damage types, and we're going to make a solid strength Crucible Wings build. And where should we go tier-wise? I'm thinking for the first tier slot, we can go with the Stone Barb Crack tier. We're a strength build, so we're going to go for some posture breaks here. That's going to be the perfect tier in this slot. Now for the second tier, we're going to go with the Faith tier to get us to 25, so we could use Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and all the buffs we like. Alright, and next up here, we're going to go into buffs. Of course, this has kind of been the same for the most part. We're going to go with Golden Vow for our Aura buff because I love Golden Vow. It lasts an incredibly long time, 15% more attack and defense. It seems obvious for our Aura buff. Since we can only stack one of each, we're going to pick that one. And then for our body buff, we're going to go with Flame Grant Me Strength for 20% more physical damage. And of course, after we grab Flame Grant Me Strength and put it in this slot, we're going to go over Talismans for this build, which is going to be really fun. We're going to turn this into a powerful build, and we're going to take on the tree avatar that's down there as well. Alright, for our first Talisman slot, you can check out our armor set there. The Winged Serpent Helm's not really going to do anything for us here. I just have it on to hit 51 poise there. We're going to go with the Shard of Alexander once again for the 15% damage boost on the weapon skill, Crucible Wings. Alright, for our second Talisman slot here, what are we going to end up picking? Well, we're going to end up going with the Ritual Swords Talisman. If you can stay at full HP, our initial attack on Crucible Wings will end up being boosted by 25% now if you combine the Ritual Sword with the Shard of Alexander. Alright, now for our third Talisman slot, we're going to go with the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, because guess what? I'm going to mix in regular hits, and I feel like this is perfect for strength builds because we're going to be two-handing this weapon. Alright, and our last Talisman slot. What are we going to pick for our last Talisman slot? Well, we're a strength build, so I'm going to go with the Claw Talisman again here, because jump attacks for us would be perfect. If you want to add the Raptor's Black Feathers or the Gray Bird Armor for the additional jump attack damage, that would be good for this build as well. By the way, for the people that regularly watch my channel, if I sound even more low energy than normal, I've been sick currently. That's why I haven't been posting as much this week. I have a lot of things that I still want to do. I've been dealing with a sinus and ear infection, although I feel like it's getting a little bit better. Yeah, there's still a lot I want to do in terms of build crafting and also list videos and whatnot, so I can't wait to get back into that, do some more runs through Shadow of the Erdtree. Alright, now let's try this out on the tree avatar. Now, if you're past rune level 150, you can use the stance breaking tier, which is only 30 seconds, closer to last. But if you're at rune level 150, you need the faith tier. You're going to have to use the tier, Golden Vow, and then Flame Grant Me Strength. Let's go use one of the coolest Ashes of War that there is, aspects of the Crucible Wings. I just call it Crucible Wings, but anyways, we're able to get in 2 hits there with it. Does a lot of damage, and of course our regular charge hits are going to do massive damage too with a colossal weapon, and a decent amount of poise damage too. Tree Avatar went down really fast. Overall, I think we've made 3 really cool builds for this. There's not a lot more you could do with it because I don't really like Sacred Affinity. There's better options for bleed and poison builds, but overall, this is probably going to be 3 of the best builds that you can run with this weapon. I like the Fire Knight's Greatsword a lot. Let's go over some of the talisman tiers and buffs for this. So, some of the best talismans that you're going to need to make a cool Fire Knight's Greatsword build are Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Axe and Claw Talisman, the Godfrey Icon, Upgraded Green Turtle, if you can grab that, whatever it's called, I forget the name of it, Defensive Talismans. And then the Flame tier, Stone Barb Crack tier, Charge tier, Stamina tier, Golden Vow, and Flame Grant Me Strength. And thanks for watching this one. I appreciate everybody that tuned into this crafting video. If you haven't seen my one for Milady, be sure to check that out too. That's in the description below. Do not forget to sub for more Elden Ring content. Shadow of the Erdtree has been awesome so far. I've got a lot more ideas in mind. I am really distracted by the fact that my foot is tapping on screen. But anyways, the Fire Knight's Greatsword is an amazing faith weapon. Be sure to try this one out. It's honestly one you're not going to be able to put down. It truly is an amazing weapon. I hope everybody has an awesome weekend, and I will catch you soon.